evening. I'm Sarah Watson. Welcome to tonight's show, Lost Songs of the Civil War. This is part of a series of Looking for Lincoln conversations. Tonight, we are featuring folklorist and musician Chris Vallillo. From camp ditties to rewritten versions of popular songs of the day, Civil War soldiers remade music to fit their own taste and reflect the struggles and hardships they faced. Chris Vallillo takes us deep into the journals and letters of Civil War troops, bringing these rare and unheard gems back to life in this new program. For more information about Looking for Lincoln conversations, visit the Looking for Lincoln Facebook page. This program is partially funded by the Illinois Arts Council. It is my distinct pleasure now to introduce Chris Vallillo.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. It's a great pleasure to be back with you folks again. Now, those of you that have seen me before know that I believe music is a powerful way to connect with another time and another place. And I want to do that tonight only in a slightly different way. I want to present a decidedly personal view of life during the Civil War using some unusual songs. As Sarah mentioned, lost songs, if you will. Songs that were made up by the actual soldiers and shared at night around the campfires and in their tents as an entertainment, as a way to blow off steam, and maybe as a way to express a longing for home and loved ones. So let me start with a song on that very theme. This is a song that was written on September the 29th of 1863. An impatient Union soldier by the name of Edmund Newsom of the Illinois 81st wrote in his diary of his frustration at a delay in the steamboat that was supposed to carry him home for his leave. He wrote, "All day long I waited patiently for the boat to start, but she remained at the wharf, and one of my 20 days already gone. Can it really be possible that I shall see home in just a few days? When I enlisted, I scarce believed I ever would see home again." Well, while he waited, he rewrote the lyrics of an old hymn, Homeward Bound, to express his frustration at the delay and his excitement about heading home. It was published, the hymn that is, was published in the 1850s, and it was sung on both sides of the war, North and South. Now, Newsom changed the song to reflect his situation. So he changed the original line, which was "Out on the ocean, all boundless we ride," to "Out on the river, all turbid and deep." And of course, he changed the destination from heaven, as it was in the hymn, to a little more, shall we say, earthly destination, Cairo, Illinois. This is the Furlough Song. Out on the river, all turbid and deep, we're homeward bound on the Father of waters that never does sleep. We're homeward bound on a good steamer. How swiftly we go! She stems the swift current and plows her way through. Hark, the revolving wheels beat the tattoo. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. Hasten, good steamer, oh hasten thy flight. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. Shun the foul sandbars, put forth all thy might. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. Keep off the sawyers obstructing our way. Keep off the shore where our enemies lay. Onward, speed onward, no cause for delay. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. Soldiers on furlough, how happy we are. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. We leave in our rear all the turmoil of war. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. The Illinois shore will soon rise to our sight. Steady now, pilot, now keep her aright. Fire up, make steam, and put forth all her might. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. Now into the harbor of Cairo we glide. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. Softly we glide on Ohio's smooth tide. We're homeward bound, homeward bound. Hasten, ye cars, and by steam speed your flight. Here now we halt, for our homes are in sight. Here are our loved ones with smiles oh so bright. We're home at last, home at last. There you go, the Furlough Song. And you know, I can just imagine that in my mind's eye when I sing that song. That's just such a powerful piece. Now, this next song I want to do for you is a song that actually became quite a hit during the Civil War. It began as a poem, and it's got quite a story to it, by the way. It was written in 1864, and it was written by a man named Samuel Hawkins Marshall Byers III of the 5th Iowa Volunteers. Now, that's a mouthful. Byers wrote this song while he was a prisoner of war down in Columbia, South Carolina. Now, in the prisoner camps, news of the war was very hard to get. But word had drifted in bit by bit that Sherman was approaching the South. And this was causing great excitement among the prisoners. Now, Byers wrote the poem that would become Sherman's March to the Sea to celebrate that good news. It was set to music by a member of the prison glee club, Lieutenant John Rockwell, and it would become immensely popular with the prisoners. Now, the song would eventually be smuggled north by a prisoner who had a hollow wooden leg. He carried the song up to Sherman's army and eventually shared it with Sherman himself. They say that in less than 1 week, that song was so popular that it was more so than it had been to the prisoners back in the war camp. As a matter of fact, Sherman himself was said to have preferred this song over the much more well-known song, Marching Through Georgia. This is a song called Sherman's March to the Sea. Our campfire shone bright on the mountain that frowned on the river below, while we stood by our guns in the morning and eagerly watched for the foe. When a rider came out of the darkness that hung o'er the mountains and trees, and shouted, "Boys, up and be ready, for Sherman will march to the sea." When cheer upon cheer for bold Sherman went up from each valley and glen, and the bugle re-echoed the music that came from the lips of the men. For we knew that the stars in our banner more bright in their splendor would be, and that blessings from Northland would greet us as Sherman marched down to the sea. Then forward, boys, forward to battle. We marched in our wearisome way, and we strewed the wild hills of Reseca. God bless those that fell on that day. Then Kennesaw in its dark glory frowned down on the flag of the free. But the East and the West bore our standard as Sherman marched down to the sea. Still onward we pressed till our banner swept out of Atlanta's grim walls, and the blood of the patriots dampened the soil where the traitor's flag falls. But we paused not to weep for the fallen who slept by each river and tree. Yet we twined them wreaths of the laurel as Sherman marched down to the sea. Proud, proud was our army that morning, that stood where the pines darkly towered, when Sherman said, "Boys, you are weary. This day fair Savannah is ours." Then sang we a song for our chieftain that echoed o'er river and lea, and the stars in our banner shone brighter when Sherman marched down to the sea. Now this song would actually go on and sell about 1 million copies during the war. And once the war was over, buyers returned home. And seeing that his song had such success, wrote to the publisher to request his share of the royalties. Well, the publisher sent him a check for $5 and told him that so many people had stolen the song and published it themselves that he hadn't made any money. Pretty typical of that era. Now, you probably are wondering what set me on this path to chase down and learn these old songs. Well, it all started probably about 10 years ago. I was performing at the General John A. Logan Museum in Murfreesboro, Illinois. And after the show, I was given a personal tour, which I always love. Now, I ended up in the office of the director, P. Michael Jones, and we were sitting talking about the collection and the importance of local history when he said, "I've got something you need to see." And he got up and walked out of the room, came back a couple of minutes later with 3 sheets of paper. Now, these were copies of a letter written by a Civil War soldier, a Union soldier from right around that region named Martin Smothers. Between about December of 1862 and July of 1863, he had sent 14 letters and this, which was a series of verses to a camp song that they had created. Now, Michael mentioned that they had no idea how this song went. They didn't know what the melody was. There wasn't any information about it. And it was written in that beautiful old-fashioned Spencerian handwriting. Beautiful to see, but very difficult to read. And they had managed to transcribe about 2/3 of the song, but had no idea what the melody might be. And as we looked at it together, I noticed that the chorus kept referring to a wagon. And sure enough, as I looked at the rest of the verses, we concluded that this schemed out perfectly to the song, "Wait for the Wagon." Well, Michael got on the internet and found the song, "Wait for the Wagon," had been published in the 1850s, and sure enough, that was the melody. Well, they sent me home with copies of that song, and I spent the next few months slowly kind of analyze it and beginning to understand the way that writing worked. And by the time it was all done, I managed to transcribe all 18 verses of the song. Now, I only got about 3 words that I'm not absolutely certain of, and I'm not going to tell you what those are. I will tell you, though, that they originally thought that the song was titled The New Jefferson Wagon. But as I worked with the material, I began to realize that wasn't it at all. It was The New Secession Wagon. So let me play this one for you right now. I will mention, though, I'm not going to do the song the way you would have heard it in the camp. In the Civil War, songs could go on as long as you want. You didn't have a 3-minute limit from a recording. So they would do verse, chorus, 18 verses long, but everyone would join in and sing as an entertainment. Modern audiences won't tolerate that. So I'm going to rearrange this song and do verse, chorus, and bring it down to a mere 5 verses. At any rate, this is the real song, The New Secession Wagon. Jeff Davis had a wagon, and on it put his name, and Beauregard was driver of Secession's ugly train. The force he would get hungry, as horses often do. They had to make the collar small to keep from pulling through. The wheel it wanted greasing, the body wasn't wide. South Carolina jumped into it, Mississippi by her side. So bully for the wagon, the new Secession wagon. Oh, Bowery, hold the reins and we'll all take a ride. Now, Bowery is short for Beauregard. Virginia took a cushioned seat and Louisiana next. North Carolina got to scrounging and Florida got vexed. But just assured here all was right, the wagon it was new. Mississippi went to Beauregard and said that would not do. Old Scott brought out his wagon, the one that run for years. They called Old Union, hitched him up and greased the running gears. So bully for the wagon, the new Secession wagon. Oh, Bowery, hold the reins and we'll all take a ride. Said Scott, McClellan, you are the boys, I want to take my place. So take the reins and get the folks and give Secession a race. New York and Pennsylvania and a host of Union boys got up into the wagon and they called for Illinois. And old Ohio, she got in, Mississippi tried her luck, and Indiana threw her arms around good old Kentucky. So bully for the wagon, the new Secession wagon. Oh, Bowery, hold the reins and we'll all take a ride. Old Union threw his head back and traveled rather slow until he reached Manassas, where they shouted, "Let him go!" Their cheers for the Union seemed to put new metal in his heel. He ran into Secession, tore the spokes out of a wheel. They took the broken wagon back and put in all new spokes. Secession went out to watch Kentucky and tell it to the folks. So bully for the wagon, the new Secession wagon. Oh, Bowery, hold the reins and we'll all take a ride. But Union started after and made the welkin ring. He ran into Secession at a place they call Mill Strings. The Secession got scared and ran away, like was never seen. Old Union threw his head back and he sailed through Bowling Green. Secession ran to the Cumberland but couldn't get across. They broke the rein that guided them and trusted to the horse. So bully for the wagon, the new Secession wagon. Oh, Bowery, hold the reins and we'll all take a ride. Old Union got his dander up and pressed them on their way. They ran into Fort Donelson but concluded not to stay. Tennessee fell out the wagon and balanced them on the pride, and asked McClellan as he passed, "Say, mister, let us ride." They went from there to Nashville, and there we changed the scene. We greased the wheel and turned Old Union's head towards Orleans. Then bully for the wagon, the new secession wagon. Oh, Bory, hold the reins and we'll all take a ride. Bully for the wagon, the new secession wagon. Oh, Bory, hold the reins and we'll all take a ride. There you go, the new secession wagon. Now that's only the second time I've ever performed that song, and I'd be willing to put money on the fact that song hasn't been played since the Civil War. But there's something magical about bringing that kind of music back to life and being able to reconnect. And I was fascinated how they used the image of a race between the new secession wagon and General Scott's old Union wagon. Now, I've been sharing songs with you today primarily on various forms of guitars. But back in the days of the Civil War, well, those guitars didn't even show up. They were still primarily a ladies' parlor instrument and almost never were seen in the Civil War era by men. But music was a huge part of camp life. As I mentioned in the beginning, it was a way to blow off steam and gripe about conditions or share anything you wanted to do. And they would do it with nothing or whatever they could find. Now this is one they always had access to. The old Jew's harp, jaw harp, mouth harp, frog, fiddle, Snoopy harp, Arkansas harp, gewgaw, geegaw, or as I affectionately named it after it took a big chunk out of my front tooth, the Tennessee Tooth Trasher. Could have bought it for a penny a piece back in that era, and if you didn't have that penny, your company blacksmith could make one for you. Now, I'd like to use this to do a song I learned a good 20 years ago. I was performing at the Missouri Folk Life Festival over at Florida, Missouri, Mark Twain's birthplace, by the way. Now, we would all have performances during the day with various musicians, and then in the evening there was a big potluck supper, and we would stay up late into the night playing all kinds of music together under the stars. That's where I first heard this song. It's called Come All Ye Missouri Gals. Now, I've heard a bunch of different versions of it, but this is the only one I've heard that I think really fits this situation. This song illustrates the distance between Illinois and Missouri politically. They were always at odds and frequently at war with one another, Illinois being an abolitionist state, Missouri being a pro-slavery state. Well, this song, it expresses that sentiment by warning the women of Missouri to stay away from those low down, no good, dirty, rotten scoundrels from Illinois. And it hurls vile insults at us Illinoisans. It says we can't feed our women anything more than hoe cakes, hominy, and sassafras tea. It says, come all you Missouri gals. Hey, come on, you Missouri gals, listen to my noise. Don't go marry no Illinois boys. If and you do, your fortune will be hoe cake, hominy, sassafras tea. Hoe cake, hominy, sassafras tea. Now, when they come a-courtin', tell you what they wear. Old leather pants all patched and bare. An old straw hat more brim than crown. A pair of dirty socks that wore the winter round. Pair of dirty socks that wore the winter round. Hey, come all you Missouri gals, listen to my noise. Don't go marry no Illinois boys. If and you do, your fortune'll be hoe cake, hominy, sassafras tea. Hoe cake, hominy, sassafras tea. Now they'll take you out to Lone Pine Hill, leave you to starve against your will, leave you alone out on the plains, 'cause that is the way of the Illinoisans. That is the way of the Illinoisans. Hey, come on, you Missouri gals, listen to my noise. Don't go marry no Illinois boys. If and you do, your fortune will be hoe cake, hominy, sassafras tea. Okay, company, sassafras tea. Ow. All right, there you go. Watch out, you women of Missouri. Well, I have time to do one more song for you here tonight. And this is a song I want to give a shout out to Christian McWhorter from the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library. He's the musicologist there, and he is the one that told me about this song. The song is called Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. Now, as with many of these camp songs, it was written using the melody of a common song. In this case, When Johnny Comes Marching Home Again. Now, ironically enough, this song would become much more popular in the Civil War than Johnny Comes Marching Home, which actually gets to be really popular during the Spanish-American War, even though it dates to the Civil War. Now, Christian mentioned that there are dozens of versions of this song. He knew of at least 8. And it's generally a song that the soldiers made up and would use it as a way to grouse about conditions, complain about the generals, or just generally blow off steam. And now, even though they're very different, they all share a common chorus. And I'll just let you hear it when I do it. But this is a fine old tune. They can get a little crass in these songs, but this is the one I found that was the most political and pointed, if you will. This is Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. Jeff Davis is a stupid fool, hurrah, hurrah. He thinks he can the Union rule, hurrah, hurrah. He never went a day in school, he is as stubborn as a mule, and we'll all drink stone blind. Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. Cotton is Jeff's darling pet, hurrah, hurrah. It will deceive him, mark me at hurrah, hurrah. And then he'll rant and fume and fret, was there an ass like him e'er met? And we'll all drink stone blind, Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. John Bull and Johnny Frenchmen too, hurrah, hurrah. Jeff dreams they will his coffers fill, hurrah, hurrah. He'll soon find out to his disgrace and wish himself out of that place, and we'll all drink stone blind, Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. His blockade runners are all gone, hurrah, hurrah. His cabinet is pale and wan, hurrah, hurrah. Our Union still is pushing on to hang the traitors one by one, and we'll all drink stone blind, Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. Give up at last, hurrah, hurrah, and play no more the rebel dunce, hurrah, hurrah. And we'll extend a brother's hand and form again a happy land, and we'll all drink stone blind, Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. Yes, we'll all drink stone blind, Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. Alrighty, there you go. Johnny Fill Up the Bowl. Now, these are just a small sample of what I'm sure are hundreds of these songs hidden in local museums, journals, diaries, and such. But I think they really can give you a personal insight into the life and times of the actual soldiers of the Civil War. Well, right now it is my pleasure to introduce the program manager of the Abraham Lincoln National Heritage Area. Friends, please welcome Heather Wickens.
Good evening, everyone. It is now time for you to ask your questions. So if you would just type your questions in the comments, we will answer as many as we have time for. So first, Chris, I want to thank you. That was very entertaining and very interesting. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I'm going to start off our first question with, of all of the songs that you played tonight, which is your favorite and why?
Well, that's a tough question, but I actually do have a favorite. The song Sherman's March to the Sea. I really just love that song. It was originally written for piano when you see the published music, and I tried to figure out a way to play it on the slide guitar. But what I love about it is the melody. I mean, that is a fairly complex melody with the various minor chords passing through it. And the idea that it was written by a prisoner of war was just amazing to me. There was an account published by the author talking about how he'd written the song. And, a lot of that was just his imagination of trying to envision what was happening outside of the walls of that prison camp. And then, of course, it becomes a song that Sherman himself loves. But to me, that's my real favorite of that. After that, I'd have to say the Furlough Song, simply because I love the idea of a soldier heading home.
Okay. All right. Here is our first question. Anne would like to know, how many more songs of these do you know?
Of this particular genre, there are probably another 3 that I didn't have time to arrange or work up. And frankly, we needed to keep the program fairly short tonight. I know, though, that there are probably hundreds of these in different diaries and such. A friend of mine in Florida, Don Oja Dunaway, had created a whole series of songs of his own based on a Civil War diary. And there are hundreds of these in local museums and historical societies. So this is the kind of thing that I know is out there, and it's totally unique. The idea of bringing a song like New Secession Wagon back to life.
I really like that one.
Yeah. Hey, trust me, that's a hard one to sing. You can tell it's a camp song because the phrasing is way out of whack at times. And, you have to really jump in ahead of different verses and such. But you're looking into seeing the experience of the war through these soldiers' eyes. And to me, that's fascinating.
Okay, here's our next question.
Pardon me while I grab a sip of tea.
Oh, definitely. All right. All right, here's our next question. Chris would like to know if you perform songs from other American wars.
I did do a show once on music from World War I, and I have not done anything on World War II. I've done something in the '60s based on protest music, but primarily once you get past 19, 20, or 30, that's it. My focus is primarily before that. Now, when I did the show on World War I, I found a song which I had known, but I had no idea it went back that far. And matter of fact, I imagine most of you folks will know it too. It's a song Hank Williams made famous called The Lovesick Blues. Now, interestingly enough, that was written in Akron, Ohio for flyers who are heading off to the war.
Wow.
And it had a minor hit during World War I, and then it kind of went into obscurity. And I believe the story is that some guy in a bar in Louisiana sold the song to Hank Williams for $10 or something like that. Hank published the song, and the gentleman who wrote it, he still had the copyright. Flew down to Nashville and got all the money. I will also say that's the only song Hank ever recorded he didn't write himself. And that was his first big hit. So he learned a lesson from that one.
Wow. Okay, here's our next question. This one is from Eric, and he would like to know, what is the most known song from the Civil War that soldiers would sing, in your opinion? So basically, in your opinion, what do you think was, the most known song? And you could probably say more than one if you know.
Well, from what I've read, one of the songs that was universally well known and loved was Home Sweet Home. which actually surprised me. But when you think about it, it makes perfect sense because so many of these songs are expressing a long for the home and the hearth, etc., that they've left. After that, Battle Cry of Freedom was a big one. Songs like Johnny Comes Marching Home really don't resonate as much in their time as they do later. And the same actually is true for the Battle Hymn of the Republic. It's written later in the war and doesn't become universally known till the war is over, at least to the degree we think. So I think some of those earlier songs definitely, but Home Sweet Home is one I've heard was perhaps the most popular song of that era.
Well, that would make sense given all those boys were far away from home. So,
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you think about it, you have folks from Illinois for the first time mixing with people from New England, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, all of these people thrown together. And the things that boil to the surface are the common themes. And, home and hearth and missing your loved ones is definitely one of those common themes.
yeah. Thank you. All right. Here we go. Here's our next question. Okay, Christine would like to know, she really enjoyed your show. If
Thank
you
you.
have a CD that you have all of the songs you sang tonight on.
No, this show was created for the Lincoln National Heritage Area. I've done one version of it that included some of these songs 7 or 8 years ago. I have not got a CD of these songs, but it might be a worthy project at some time. And I could combine them with a whole nother series of songs that I did for the WFMT radio network that were songs written about Lincoln's death from his time. So that might be a good combination. But right now I don't, but it might be worth working up.
Okay. Stephanie would like to know if you've ever played the song Lorena.
I love that song.
It's apparently her favorite.
It's a gorgeous song. Talk about a magnificent melody. I played it. It didn't actually make it into the Lincoln in Song show, but it is on my Abraham Lincoln in Song CD, and I play it on bottleneck slide guitar, and it is one of my all-time favorite songs. Talk about a gorgeous melody. And the interesting story behind that song is that it was written by a minister from, I believe, Columbus, Ohio, who had been dating a young woman, and the family was fairly well-to-do. And they decided he was not worthy. So they refused to let him date their daughter. Well, he was heartbroken, and he left and moved down south, and later wrote a poem that would become the lyrics for the song Lorena. Now, the really interesting part is the fact that the heroine of the real story, her name wasn't Lorena. He made that name up as a way to fit the rhyming scheme. And as a matter of fact, an entire generation of Southern women were named Lorena because of that song. Her original name was Bertha.
That doesn't seem to have the same rhyming factor.
It doesn't have that beautiful flow to it. No offense to any Berthas in the audience. It's a beautiful name.
Okay. Here's our next question from Kurt. Okay, were there any songs that had secret messages from the soldiers, much like songs from slaves for the Underground Railroad?
Ooh, I think a lot of these camp songs have their version of stories in them. For instance, the Secession Wagon song, where they're using the imagery of a race between these two horse-drawn wagons. And I don't doubt that there are other colloquialized versions. I mean, songs like this where they've made up new words to express their versions of things. I'm not specifically aware of any, coded songs that were sung by troops, unless they were African-American troops singing Underground Railroad songs. Doesn't mean they don't exist, but it hasn't come across my plate. I will pass that question on to Christian McWhirter, though, the next time I see him.
Yeah, he might know.
He might.
Okay, so here's our next question. Anne would like to know, are any of the songs from Oh Freedom from the Civil War era in earlier renditions?
Well, first of all, hi, Ann. So nice to have you with us. Yes. In the show, Oh Freedom, I do a number of songs that date all the way back to the Civil War. Of course, Follow the Drinking Gourd, which is one of the best known Underground Railroad code songs. What's the one? I Shall Not Be Moved stretches all the way back to the slave era. The lyrics, at any rate, I'm sure the melody is more modern. Wade in the Water is a song that's in that show. Harriet Tubman herself used to sing that song as a way to alert the community that she was in the area and ready to lead slaves to safety. That might be it for that particular show, but there's a wealth of songs that go all the way back to that era. And it's always a pleasure to explore those and kind of get a taste of life from their point of view.
So I have another follow-up question.
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about other songs from the Civil War. So just out of curiosity, what is your favorite song from the Civil War era?
My favorite song from the Civil War era. That might be Battle Cry of Freedom. I know you've heard it plenty of times. So
I love Battle Cry of Freedom. It's like one of my favorites. So,
but me too. I mean, the melody, the music. You know, I did it primarily as an instrumental for years, and then when I was working with Lincoln National Heritage Area, I actually worked up a version of the song up to tempo with the words, and it's just a very stirring song, and that would perhaps be my personal favorite.
Okay. Well, I think our questions are winding down here.
Well, boy, we've had some good ones tonight.
We've had some really good questions. I'm scrolling through again to see, but all right. As a follow-up, and I think you kind of already answered this, but someone did ask a question about the most popular songs, which I think you said was basically
seems to be. I know Home Sweet Home was one. A lot of songs like Aurelie and Lorena go into that same, kind of grouping. The songs of Home and Hearth just really, really resonate with Civil War soldiers. I mean, remember, everybody expected the war to last maybe 2 months. They're going to lick the other side and go home. And, it dragged on for 4 years with, hundreds of thousands of casualties. So no one really expected to be in the situation they were in. And, that really grounds you back to the things that matter, your loved ones, where you come from, your home, So I could really sense how those songs would resonate in that era, especially with soldiers on both sides, by the way.
Okay, so for our last question for this evening, why do you think we should study songs of the Civil War? Why are they important to us today?
Well, as I said earlier, songs from different time periods can literally put you there and put you there in a way, like I say, it's almost visceral. The way the melodies sound, the tempos are slower, reflective of the way life was in those days. I mean, compare Lorena to a rap song today. Both of those songs represent their times fairly accurately. The Civil War the nation is still primarily agrarian based, farmers in small towns. Nowadays, it's much more urban. Life is faster and harder and more driving. My 19-year-old daughter loves those really techno pop songs that pound and beat so fast, no real human could make that noise. But it reflects her world. And I just love the way music can do that. And when we go back to the era of the Civil War, we're able to get these insights into the way the soldiers lived, the soldiers fought, and their hopes and dreams. And the thing that I find is that they're expressed differently, but those themes are universal. And I really feel like I could understand one of those people a whole lot better after having worked with the music.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank our audience for joining us this evening. And we'll actually be back next week with a Looking for Lincoln conversation as well, featuring a conversation with Frederick Douglass at 7 o'clock next Wednesday. So we hope you will join us for that. But anyway, have a great evening, everyone, and we will see you next week.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.